I'll never forget the day my grandmother's clay pot shattered, revealing something that changed my life forever. When I was about 10 years old, my parents decided I should spend the holidays with my grandmother in the village. The village, surrounded by tall green trees and hills, was very different from the busy streets of the city. Everything there felt peaceful, the songs of birds in the morning, the sound of crickets at night, and the wind that made the leaves rustle. My grandmother lived in a small mud house with a thatched roof. It wasn't fancy, but it was cozy. The smell of burning wood and fresh herbs filled the air. Her yard was always full of life, chickens running around, goats nibbling on grass, and neighbors coming to visit. I loved being there. It was a place where I could run barefoot on the soft ground, climb mango trees, and play with my cousins. My grandmother, whom everyone called Mama, was the center of this world. She was a kind, strong woman with hands that had worked hard all her life. Her laugh was warm and could make anyone smile. But there was one thing that always puzzled me about Mama's house, an old clay pot on a high shelf in her room. The pot was plain, with no decorations to make it special. It just sat there quietly, gathering dust. But there was something about it that seemed important. Every time I asked about it, Mama would just smile and say, "That pot is for something special. One day, you'll understand." At that time, her answer only made me more curious. I would stare at the pot whenever I was in her room, wondering what could be inside. Maybe treasure. Maybe something magical. Or a secret from her past. One afternoon, my cousin Chokuma and I were playing tag in the yard. We ran around, laughing and shouting, trying to catch each other. I was determined not to let him catch me, so I ran into the house, thinking I could hide in Mama's room. But in my hurry, I bumped into the shelf where the pot was sitting. Before I could stop it, the pot wobbled and fell to the ground. It crashed loudly and broke into pieces. For a moment, I froze. I just stared at the broken pot and the mess it made. I didn't know what to do. I felt a knot in my stomach, and my heart was racing. Then, something caught my eye. Coins. They were spilling out from the broken pot, gold coins, silver ones, and copper ones, all shining brightly against the dusty floor. There were so many of them, way more than I thought the pot could hold. Chokuma, who had followed me into the house, looked at the mess and whispered, "You're in trouble now." Then, he quickly ran back outside. I didn't know what to do. I was scared and didn't want Mama to be upset. I could hear footsteps coming closer, and I knew it was Mama. She appeared in the doorway, and her eyes immediately landed on the broken pot. I braced myself for a scolding, but instead, she just sighed and walked over to where I was standing. She bent down and started picking up the coins, carefully and slowly. "Kin," she said gently, "come and help me." I was surprised by how calm she was. I quickly knelt down to help her. As I picked up the coins, I noticed how heavy they were and how cool they felt in my hands. Each one seemed to tell its own story. When we had gathered all the coins, Mama sat down on her stool and motioned for me to sit beside her. "Do you know where all these coins came from?" she asked, holding one coin in her hand. I shook my head, feeling guilty and unsure what to say. Mama smiled softly and said, "Let me tell you a story." My grandmother's eyes softened as she began her story. "When I was a young girl," she said, "life wasn't easy. My family didn't have much money. We were poor. But my father, your great-grandfather, always taught us the value of hard work and being responsible with what we had. One day, he gave me a single coin and said, 'This is yours, but it's not for wasting. Use it wisely, and you'll see what it can grow into.'" At first, Mama didn't know what to do with the coin. She thought about buying sweets or maybe a new dress. But then, an idea came to her. She decided to use the coin to buy melon seeds. She took the coin to the market and bought a small handful of seeds. She found a corner on their farm, planted the seeds, and watered them every day. She watched as the plants grew, and after some time, the melons became ripe. When the melons were ready, she sold them at the market. The money she earned was enough to buy even more seeds, so she planted again. She smiled as she remembered. It wasn't just about selling the melons, she said. It was about understanding that money can grow if you use it wisely. My father was teaching me that if I just spent the coin, it would be gone. But if I planted it, if I used it to grow something, it would come back to me many times over. As time passed, her small farm grew bigger. She planted more crops, like yams and cassava, and started keeping a few chickens. Every time she sold something from the farm, she saved a little of the money and put the rest back into the farm to buy more seeds or supplies. Slowly, the money she started with began to grow. I began to notice something, she continued. As the years went by, my little farm was producing more than I could ever have imagined. What started as one small coin became dozens. All from careful planning and reinvesting. But, Grandma, I interrupted, why didn't you just spend all the money? If you spent it, wouldn't life have been easier? Mama smiled and placed her hand on mine. Her eyes shone with wisdom as she said, "Oh, Kin, that's where many people go wrong. If I had spent everything I earned, I would have had nothing left. But instead, I thought of my money like seeds. If you eat all the seeds, you'll be full for one day. But if you plant them, they'll grow into plants that feed you forever." Her words stayed with me. I didn't understand it fully at the time, but I knew she was teaching me something important. She was teaching me to think ahead and not to be greedy. She showed me that saving, even just a little, and using it wisely, was a better way to live. As I got older, I started to understand what Mama meant. I began to notice how easy it was to spend money on small things that didn't last. Whenever I got pocket money or received a gift, it was tempting to spend it all. But I remembered what Mama had said. I thought of my money as seeds, just like she had. So I began saving. I didn't always save much. Sometimes I saved just a small part of my allowance. But over time, I started seeing the same thing happen that Mama had described. My savings started to grow. It wasn't because I was adding more money all the time, but because the money I had saved was earning interest. That's when I learned about something called compound interest. It's a simple idea. When you save or invest money, you don't just earn interest on the amount you started with. You earn interest on your original money, plus the interest it has already earned. It's like planting a tree. The tree gives you fruit, and inside each fruit are more seeds to grow more trees. It felt like magic to me. It wasn't about having a lot of money now, but about letting your money grow over time, just like Mama's farm. The more patient you were, the bigger your savings would become. Years passed, and I went back to visit Mama again. I was excited to share how her story had inspired me. I told her how I was now saving and investing my money, just like she had taught me. I explained how I had learned about compound interest and how it worked. She laughed softly. "So that's what it's called," she said, looking pleased. I didn't know the name for it, but I knew it worked. Her smile made me feel proud. Mama didn't have any formal education, but she had a wisdom that went far beyond anything I had ever learned in school. She had taught me one of the most powerful lessons in life: to use money wisely, be patient, and let it grow. Looking back, I now understand that the day I broke the clay pot was more than just an accident. It was a lesson in patience, discipline, and the power of small beginnings. The pot wasn't just a container for coins, it was a symbol of how small actions can lead to big results over time. That's the beauty of compound interest. It's not magic, it's the reward for being patient and consistent. Just like planting seeds, if you take care of your money and give it time, it will grow into something bigger than you ever imagined.